Nothing changes instantaneously. Nothing changes instantaneously. In a gradually heating bathtub, you'd be boiled to death before you knew it. Our Father, who art in heaven. Seriously? What the actual fuck?
Gilead doesn't care about children. Gilead cares about power.
Why does healing have to be the only goal? Why can't we be as furious as we feel?
For whatever man sows, so shall he reap.
Welcome to Above the Garage.
Hi, friends. I'm so excited we're finally releasing these interviews. Just re-listening to them has me excited all over again. We truly enjoyed all of these conversations so much and learned so much from every single one. Come back on Monday to hear our interview with Mary Arthurs, props master on The Handmaid's Tale and owner of the cleverest Instagram handle, Mary Proppins. And next Thursday, come back for Amanda Brugel, who of course plays the lovely Rita Pooh. But today, we have a fascinating episode learning all about the Handmaid's Tale locations for you. As you know, The Handmaid's Tale is filmed in some of the most striking and memorable locations we've ever seen on screen. And credit for that goes to location managers Anne Richardson and Jeremy Pinard, and obviously the incredible locations team they work with. So without further ado, let's hear from them.
Hi. Thanks for joining us. We're very excited to talk about locations. I feel like we say this a lot, but it actually seems like the coolest job.
It has its moments for sure. It's great.
And you're going out to do that today, later.
Yeah, we're going to do a little survey of one of the locations for Block 1 that we're using with David Lester's episode on 603, I think, the third episode.
So how early do you start scouting? Like, when did you get the scripts ahead of time, obviously? And how early do you start scouting the locations?
This year we've been pretty lucky. We've been getting scripts really early, which is a huge help to us because then we can, bring more options to the table.
Right. So do you take it then to the director? Like, all right, basically you get the scripts. Is it all like you envisioning where this is? How much extra notes do you get from people telling you guidance on what kind of location they want? How does it work?
We work alongside with Elizabeth Williams, our production designer. So typically what we do is we'll get a script, we'll break it down for what the locations are that are required, and then we will send our scout out, or we will go out and look for the locations that might work for what we have in the script. And then we present them to our production designer, who reviews them first, and then we send a package off to the director to take a look at them.
Mm. Do you have a lot of people working with you to scout the location?
We actually started for this season, which we weren't supposed to start filming until after Labor Day, but we actually started with the scouting for this season in December of last year.
Oh, wow.
So in December, we worked a few weeks to kind of come up with some of the main locations that would be reoccurring throughout the season. And then we actually were able to go out and again in February to see some of them with Lizzie, who was directing the portions of the first block and obviously is our EP, so she has a lot of control and say about what it is that we are looking for, especially carrying through the rest of the season. And we feel like we were probably already working a couple of months by the time we actually got into prep here in June, which for us, having scripts it's a game changer. And usually every season we get maybe the first 2 scripts and you get to work on the first couple and then you get some outlines of what the rest of it looks like. But we've been fortunate to have a lot of scripts this year.
Yeah, it's been great.
Yeah.
I mean, I imagine exterior locations are in this area fairly seasonal specific, right? Because if it's snow on the ground, that kind of thing, right?
Well, and there's certain locations that have more accessibility, during the summer months, like schools, that type of thing,
Right.
colleges, that we have, more available weeks where we can get in, whereas some are quite limited to, weekends only, which we really try to avoid because the crew hates having to work every single weekend.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I mean, last season we finished in August, so we were kind of picking up where we left off. So starting in September isn't so bad, although it's getting a little bit fun now because the fall colors are coming in and the timelines have to match up. So
that's hard. I hadn't thought, I think about the weather a lot and how complicated that must be in TV. But leaves changing had not occurred to me.
There's been many a time when special effects have had to remove snow off somebody's front lawn just because what we shot the day before, there was no snow there.
Continuity.
And I mean, in seasons past, I think when we were kind of more Gilead focused, the imagery has always looked really cool with the red cloaks against a snowy background.
Right.
It has that great
striking
contrast and pop. So it's actually interesting to be shooting in the summer on this show. It's a little bit different.
Yeah, you guys almost were going to start at some point. I think it was going to be a warmer shoot for once, and then it got delayed again. And
it was
now
last
it's
year
your
in
typical
May.
winter.
I think we were supposed to start.
Yeah.
And then we
The
had
writer's
the
strike.
writer strike
Yeah.
and the delays, and it almost got pushed almost a full year.
Right. Yeah. Did you actually get any scripts before any of those delays, or did you know that it wasn't really going
Just outlines.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah, just some outlines. But we kind of, like, they came to us with the ideas of some of the bigger locations that were going to be kind of the, the linchpin of what the season was going to be. So we had one that we knew that we were going to pitch last year, and it ended up being one of our biggest locations for the year, which is good.
We were just very grateful it was still available
Yeah.
Right.
a year later.
Is it hard to sometimes get into the locations? Like, do you have to go through a lot of like emails and calls to people?
It depends on how long we need the locations for. If some of the locations are recurring locations, like houses, that type of thing.
Yeah.
We have to also sometimes check in the areas that we're in that it hasn't been overfilmed and that it is an area that we can go back for repeat visits throughout the season. But Jeremy and I have been doing this for a while, so we already have sort of a book of contacts. So, we've scouted a lot of places already. And sometimes it could be locations that we've previously scouted and haven't used, and then we end up going back to them again.
Yeah.
So, but it is a process. You have to have as much detail as you can before you approach these people and start speaking to them about what your ask is.
I imagine you keep meticulous notes even on the places you're not going to use, just so you can revisit it for...
Oh, yeah, we've got notes of all the seasons so far of the show, so we have a big kind of a bank of location photos of stuff that from season 1 all the way through to now that
would be cool.
Could come up again. And even in this year, like every year we like to see some of the stuff that we've seen in the past because there's a lot of really iconic imagery there, so they want to kind of revisit those, which is great. And I mean, even further to what Anne was saying is sometimes we go into a community that's newer or hasn't had a lot of filming, because we do travel quite a bit and quite far away from the city to find some of these locations.
Yeah.
We end up at 8 o'clock at night in town council meetings talking to them because they just have no idea what to expect when a show our size comes to town, and we're like, oh yeah, so we're going to need cranes and we're going to need to throw somebody off the bridge into the wall, and they're the conversations can be pretty surreal.
Probably
but it's
like
fun.
the funnest council meeting that town has ever had.
But, this show is so well received everywhere. It is so popular that, when we make that initial call, it's usually a gasp that we get first. It's like, oh, The
I hear
Handmaid's
it's
Tale.
my wife's favorite show.
Oh, we hear that all the time. Yeah. But it's very popular, so, people kind of roll out the red carpet for us. We're very lucky in that respect.
Yeah, and we talked to John Weber yesterday, who was amazing, and he said, like, if there's any trouble getting a location, then he kind of comes into the process and makes some calls, and that's helpful, I'm sure.
It
He
is
has
so
definitely
helpful
stepped in to help
for
us.
us, yeah.
Yeah.
Is your department also who's responsible for getting the permit, like seeking permits and...
Yeah, we get all the permits, and the permit level is kind of everything from if we're doing fire or any kind of special effects or gunfire. We have to organize for police supervision. We have to have permits from the city. Most communities have bylaws in place for any work happening outside of the hours of 11 p.m. and 7 a.m., in which case you have to send guys out, canvass entire neighborhoods, get written approval from the majority of the residents there.
Oh, really?
So that we can get exemptions to these bylaws. And it's not only for filming at night, because if our trucks are coming in at 3 o'clock in the morning or something, everyone has to understand what it is we're doing and be very transparent about everything that's taking place.
Well, and sometimes we actually have prep crews that are almost as big as the shoot crew. Like, we do a lot of prep work, a lot of set dressing work in certain areas, and it involves a lot of people.
Yeah, they were saying that scene in season, is it 1 or 2, where they're holding the rocks in the courtyard.
At Wycliffe College,
Yeah, that they had to use like a giant crane because it's literally in the middle of a building, and they had to start at like midnight to set up the shoot.
Yep.
Which is wild, like midnight to 7 setting up.
Well, even last year, one of the finale episodes, we had a camera crane that was being used inside of the train station, and the train station was actually a subway station at York University here in Toronto. We had to get a crane to lift our crane over the building to get it down into the door that would actually fit into the subway station.
That's wild.
It's logistics Olympics.
Do you have a favorite location from all of the seasons that stands out to you?
I think the most iconic and recognizable is probably the wall in Cambridge.
Yeah.
You know, it's just...
You can't beat that
It
visual.
really is just, it's so phenomenal every time you see it. And it is it's just Gilead, you know.
It's true. A lot of that area, even where the wall is in that part of Cambridge, was so heavily established in the first season, and it couldn't have been... Like, the area that was picked couldn't have been better. It's actually quite perfect. I was there yesterday talking to these folks in a church that we're looking at, and they're like, "Are you guys coming to hang people again?"
Yeah. It's very famous for that there, I'm sure.
New Bethlehem's pretty cool also.
But it's kind of surreal when it's people at a church asking that.
Yeah, right.
Where is the New Bethlehem shot, like the exteriors?
Crystal Beach.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's almost Buffalo.
Yeah?
Yeah, it's way down
Lake
past
Erie.
Niagara Falls.
Really?
How far away is that?
At least close to 2 hours from here, I would say.
Yeah.
What's the furthest that you've gone?
I'd say either that or Washington.
Yeah,
Well, we didn't go.
we didn't do Washington because we were here in Toronto.
Was last year's Mayday camp? I liked last year's Mayday camp a lot. How did you find it? It doesn't seem like it seems like a random building in the woods.
Yeah, it was.
Which
But
is
it was
really cool
split up,
find.
wasn't it? It was split up over a couple of locations, actually.
was.
And
Okay.
yeah, and you know, we had the worst weather when we were shooting those scenes. It was just like monsoon
I think
weather.
I
It
saw
was
videos
really
of mud.
challenging.
Yeah, it was like right when winter turned to spring, and it literally happened in a day, and it just rained and rained and rained, and we were about 1.5 kilometers into this farm field.
Oh no.
Yeah, it was knee-deep mud in places that we had to get through, so
It was challenging.
we had like 50 guys with moving track mat, moving
Really?
everything just to get the trucks in. It was
Logistics is insane.
a nightmare. It was a lot.
It looked great though. Obviously.
Thank you. Good.
Any of the wood, like shooting in the woods anywhere, seems very complicated to me. But also, I guess I'm wondering, all of the scenes that take place in a forest, in the woods, have a very distinct look to them, even though you're shooting in the wilderness. How do you determine that when you go to a location and you look at it?
It's crucial, like Jeremy was just saying. You can't go way into the woods. It has to be sensible in the sense that you've got to know that you can get your equipment and your crew in and out.
easily.
Otherwise, you just can't. You can't
Right.
make it. You can't do a shoot day. So it's important to know that you have also the infrastructure around you that you need. Is there somewhere for the crew to go for lunch? Is there somewhere to put tents up for your background performers? So all of that has to come into play before you can actually offer up a location. You know, we can't throw something on the table at them that is just impossible for us to
You gotta hike
service.
a mile to get
Yeah,
to.
yeah, it might look great, but you can't get
Doesn't
to
matter.
it.
Yeah.
And this show is all about lighting. Lighting is kind of one of the, like, every image is like a photograph on this show, and
Right.
it is
Yeah.
due to the great lighting that they do. But with the great lighting comes 135-foot cranes with giant lights in the sky and tons of smoke and all of the things that go along with it. So, I mean, finding somewhere that can accommodate all of those things is the tricky part, really.
Yeah. So the woods where June was chasing Fred, was that near here? Was it?
That was in Hamilton, actually. That was at
Dundas Conservation.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it looked amazing. Great location.
How long have you both been working in locations?
Well, I'm hitting.
You ever heard
This
of the
is my
Littlest Hobo?
35th year as a location manager.
No way.
Yeah.
That's impossible.
Yeah.
Wow, that's
Yeah.
awesome though.
Only
Yeah.
25 years from me.
Only.
Only a quarter of a century. Okay.
Have you
That's
been
really
working
cool.
together for a long part of that?
I actually, it's really funny, is when I was first starting out, I was Anne's PA, so I was kind of one of the guys that set up the lunchrooms and emptied the garbage cans and stuff like
Yeah.
that. And then I became an assistant location manager, but I think Anne and I have been working together now for at least 13 or 14 years.
Yeah. Yeah, we've been teamed up for quite a while.
That's awesome.
So do you obviously you do other shows together? Do you always work together?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We try to. We try to stay together. Sometimes
cool.
I take maybe a bit more of a break than Jeremy will in between shows, but yeah, we try to stick together as much as we can.
Have you ever used like a similar location or a same location for any of the shows that you've been on, or seen one maybe for, let's say, Handmaids, and then been like, oh, actually I'll use it for somewhere else?
Definitely. I mean, you know, there's certainly in Southern Ontario, there's some great go-to locations that not just us, but many shows use, many productions, and it, you know, it gets repurposed for whatever the storyline is on the show that you're working on. But yeah.
Do you talk to the other locations, Toronto people? Like, is there
Yep.
close knit? It seems
Oh,
like
yeah, we all know.
very
It's a tight community
useful,
for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, we share locations. We'll ask other, location teams, look, we're going to go into this location. Is there anything you want to flag with us that we should know about? Yeah.
Cool.
And sometimes we overlap too. We're looking at dates that they might be looking at. And we always try to make it work out. We like to, as we term it, play nice in the sandbox together because we all work for the same film community.
Yeah.
It's true. I mean, especially downtown Toronto, a lot of the time when you put in a permit application, even just for parking, because of the amount of trucks that we have and the amount of space we need, there's only so many places that can accommodate that because of rush hours and all of those things. Quite often, I'll put in a permit application 2 months in advance, and I'll still be fifth in line.
Really?
Yeah. And then you have to talk to everybody, work out your dates, because we're probably most likely looking at the same location at a lot of those places.
Well, like the Royal York Hotel, it's a popular location, and
yeah, the Royal York, even Wycliffe, anything that's up there and by
running
U
into
of T,
conference.
there's only so many places to park, so
Yeah, true.
That's really interesting.
Yeah, I didn't think of that. You have to accommodate literally everyone and all the trailers
and everybody's. We have a big film unit on this show, so if you put 3 or 4 of those in the downtown core, it gets pretty chaotic pretty quickly.
So do you avoid downtown mostly?
Yes.
I think you did I guess the season 5 episode 1 screens.
Dundas Square.
Dundas Square, yeah.
We did a lot downtown last year. Toronto played a big part of last season.
Yeah, because it was in Toronto, so yeah, that makes sense.
Seeing the iconic stuff like Dundas Square was... Actually, I think that was Lizzie's idea. I'm sure we probably weren't too keen on it when it came out.
It is difficult to go into the city core.
Especially that area of the city, that's as in the core as you can be. And
it's expensive shutting down that park for...
the closer you get to the city, the more expensive everything gets. And that's probably the same in any big metropolis. Yeah. Your parking becomes more expensive, your business buyouts become more expensive. So it's just, you have to just budget accordingly for that.
Yeah. You also have to give up a lot of the control that you would normally have at a location. It's much easier to get control in closed streets in Brantford than it is downtown. So when we go into downtown Toronto, if we were asking for a road closure, they'd probably want us to do it at night or on a weekend or something like that, in which case that can get tricky.
But you were able to shut down the town of Brantford for days, right?
For Fred's funeral.
But how did you... I have seen Brantford. I can't imagine looking at that square and seeing this enormous, amazing, striking state funeral. But you guys did. And it looked incredible on TV.
It's actually it screams Gilead, all of those older buildings, and the way that square is set up is very European look, which is kind of what they've been going for. We went to Brantford because we knew it was a place that we could get the control, but also because it 100% matches the look.
Well, and it has a 360 view to it because it is a square, so it's not just one straight road. It actually has an entire 360 view of these perfect Gilead buildings.
Yeah. So did you find it pretty quickly, or did you scout for more?
I think we had a good idea when we were reading what was coming up, that would be a good opportunity to use that as the location for it. And also we had been in contact with the economic development folks out there, and they were really anxious to have us come to do something big there. We had been there for a couple of small things, but they were excited to have us back, which was really helpful cool. Also.
Yeah. I think also initially the script, I'm not sure that it read as big as what it turned out to be, because ultimately we were looking at kind of getting road closures on a single street here in Toronto, but then when we went out there and actually had a look at that place, I believe that location grew to the size of what we had there, which was kind of great. So they really made the most of it. It was really good value.
Do you do a lot of research online to find things?
A little.
Yeah, I mean, we use the Google guy on Google Maps sometimes just to drive down a street to see if there might be some, houses that are of interest. But, like I said earlier, we've been doing it for such a long time now. Yeah. We really do have a good idea of already what's out there, and it's more getting on the phone and finding out about availabilities.
Getting it, right.
When you first started, what was it like?
It was completely different than what we do now. We didn't have iPhones where you took the photos of the locations. I mean,
did you use maps? Actual maps?
We'd used actual maps.
Paper maps.
We used to photograph locations,
get
the film developed, and then
cool.
paste the pictures together, present a file. It just seems so archaic now to think back that's how we did it.
Around a roll of quarters because we had to stop at payphones if we had to make phone calls.
The payphone still worked?
You'd only bring 2 or 3 locations as an option a week, and now we do that, exceed that in a day.
Yeah.
Yeah. What is the process like? How is it different when you're approaching like a residence to use their home? For instance, the Waterford home and the Putnam home.
The Putnam home was actually something that was already kind of established as a filming location from other shows, so that was kind of a word of mouth thing. But a lot of the time, like, you kind of have to put out a letter. It's very hard, especially on houses of that size, because they're gated. So you kind of have to put out letters, and it's almost like fishing. So you'll put out a scouting letter to any houses that you think look like they would suit the bill, and then you kind of have to wait for them to come to you. You know, like you can't really force the issue.
Them.
Yeah, you can't. You have to kind of put out as many letters as you can, and then it becomes more of a numbers game. Get as much as you can, and you don't really know what the inside of their houses look like either, right? So it's kind of, there's a lot of duds. Like, you'll show up and you'll be like, nope, but you're here. So you take the photos, you know, and again, it goes into the bank, and maybe it becomes useful for another show.
Yeah, I think did she say that you couldn't use the Putnam House anymore? Did that change, or?
No, there was a time towards the end of, I guess it was season 4, that the neighborhood was getting what we term as fatigued. And that was more with the Waterford house, actually, in Hamilton. And, you know, we can understand that. Yeah. We're a big show, and it wasn't just from our show. There were other shows that were filming in that area. It's called the Durand neighborhood in Hamilton, and they were tired of it. They needed a break. Yeah. So they sort of held off issuing permits for about 2 years to let people have a break from, you know, having a film crew there like 3-4 times a month.
Yeah.
I think they've now opened the doors to that area again, which is great news. They've had their break,
like,
and they're
tentatively, you know, for the right projects and stuff like that. They're not just kind of letting everybody in the way it was, because even in that neighborhood, we were there one week, and then there was another show there the next week, because it's a great neighborhood. Like, it's a beautiful looking place.
That happens in commercial areas as well. You know, the businesses, it's like they get fatigued, and we want our customers to be able to come and go. It's great that you're compensating for us for our loss of business, but we're losing our customers permanently. So you need to, the hot pockets, you need to stay away from them for a while. And the City of Toronto is great about informing us when they're putting a moratorium, it's called, on certain areas. So we don't even offer it as a location.
Yeah, we actually got a call from them earlier this year to ask us if we were going back to Luke, June, and Moira's house from last season.
Right.
Just because that neighborhood is heavily filmed. Like, there's so many different shows that we're filming at different houses, not just the same house we were in, but different parts of that neighborhood that, you know, the neighbors were starting to push back a little and say, listen, you know, come on, enough's enough.
Well, when we were talking yesterday to special effects, to John, he was saying they had to, like, build a house to burn down outside the Waterford house.
Yeah,
that is a lot to take for a residential area when you're just living in your house.
Yeah.
It is, and I mean, you know, we kind of become the tip of the sword. So we go into these neighborhoods, and there's a lot of fighting between the residents of that neighborhood and the city because of stuff that they want done. Like, there's a school that we use on another show in Hamilton, and the school is sitting there empty, so they're trying to use it for filming as much as they can. And it's become popular because there's not a lot of schools that you can shoot at, like, Monday to Friday that are just sitting there empty. So a lot of shows were using it, but, you know, like, you show up, and of course we have trucks moving in and out at all kinds of times of the night, and we have, you know, the crew shows up, and we provide them a crew parking and stuff like that, but inevitably people are going to sneak their cars into different parts of the neighborhood, and we try to fight back on that as much as we can with our guys. But I mean, they're not breaking the law, but the problem is we don't know the existing argument between that neighbor and the city is trying to get permit parking because he wants to be able to have his car parked in front, and then we walk into the middle of it, and we're like, oh, sorry.
Yeah. What was the location maybe that took you the longest to find on the show? Was there something that was difficult to find?
It's been so many seasons. So many seasons of the show.
It's not, you know, I think we can always come up with options. And what's great about this show is that, you know, the producers and Lizzie and our production designer, they're really open to us kind of going outside of the box a little bit and presenting something that we know if it's a difficult location to get and we need to shoot it during the week, if it's completely impossible to get that in the amount of days that we need it, would you consider instead of it being this location, something completely different.
Yeah.
And they're great that way. So really, it always comes down to availability. You know, we sometimes only film in a location for 1 or 2 days, but we often require 2 or 3 weeks to prep and set dress that location. So it's not just the film days that we need them for. We need lots of time to get in and out of these locations before we even shoot them.
Yeah.
Was that the bowling alley that was used last year?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was all the way out in Welland.
Was that still open? Like,
Yes.
We heard that was hard, I think.
But it was a smaller bowling alley, so, you know, we had enough time where they could notify their bowling teams that we were coming in. But, you know, we compensated them enough for the use of their facility that it, you know, went toward their bowling league funds, and they were happy to close down for the 2 or 3 weeks that we were there.
It was a pretty tricky one to find, too, because I think it was originally scripted as kind of a bowling alley in the middle of the forest.
And honestly, not a lot of bowling leagues will shut down.
Yeah.
They're like,
You
no,
should take their
this
bowling
is important.
seriously.
We're not, sorry,
Yeah.
we're not giving up our dates.
Which I get, I think we had heard that when they were looking for the bowling alley,
oh, yeah. I think it was Elizabeth, maybe.
I don't know, there was offered a water park at some point instead of the bowling alley.
Yeah, I mean, we can't give up what we're doing.
That was
future,
last
but
season,
yeah,
so we can say
There's a
that.
couple of interesting places that we've looked at them and we've never gone to them. And you know, we'll always keep putting them forward just because they're there.
Yeah.
And they're interesting.
We hope we get to use them.
Do you have a big list?
We've got, like Jeremy said, we've got a pretty big bank of location files of places that are
They're
are
places,
really
though,
cool.
that you really want to use, that you're trying to...
Yeah, I think even with that bowling alley, it kind of, the thought kind of went from it being a bowling alley to maybe it's an arcade, and then we kind of started looking at some water parks that were closed for the season that would have spaces like that.
And it's also, is it indoor, is it outdoor too, right? Yeah.
That would have been fun watching June slide down the water slide.
Rosie would have liked that.
I think she would have, yeah.
Like, you have to have a certain amount of indoor locations because, you know, you do run into weather issues.
Yeah,
so,
especially with the show. Always in the winter.
Yeah.
What is the process like when you start working with set design and production design and props?
So we obviously work with Elizabeth in finding the locations, and then her art directors, like Larry and it was Martha in the past, they need to visit the location multiple times and take measurements, and they'll actually do a drawing and they'll draw up a scope of work for us. It'll be very detailed. So like if it's inside of this room, they'll tell us that they want to take down those clocks, they want to take that, they want to change out the furniture, they want to change light fixtures, they want to paint everything. Sometimes I don't know what we've provided as a location because by the time they finish changing stuff, I was like, we gave you a really nice floor. But they once they give us that scope of work, it's very helpful with us because that's kind of the basis of negotiation with the people that own the property.
Right.
This is the amount of stuff that we want to do to your place, and this is how many days we need to be there. And then we come up with some sort of a figure that is, you know, makes it worth their while and also works for us. And
we never, ever film a location as it actually is. We always have to make changes to it. There's always signs that have to come down. There's, you know, logos that we're not allowed to shoot. So we always, and then of course our lighting, our pre-rigging guys have to go in too. So it's not just the art department. We have to get those two departments in to get set up before the film shoot shows up. And then again, once we've wrapped filming at that location, we have to get all those departments back in to remove all of their stuff.
So you said it was like 2 or 3 weeks, right? That you
Some locations, I mean, if it's something smaller, it's always a minimum of at least 2 days. We try not to squeeze the prep days in tighter than that because they can't all work on that site at the same time. You know, you want your art department, construction, paint, set dressers to go in, and then you send your riggers in and your lighting guys in after that.
How long was the Mayday area? Because I noticed obviously the inside was there was so much going on, like everything all over the walls and stuff.
we were probably 5 or 6 weeks of prep at that location because there were a couple of buildings that were already there, but there were a lot of like makeshift shelters that we built on the property while we were there. And the weather was also, I mean, maybe the prep might have gone a little bit slower than we would have liked just because we were fighting the weather the whole time. Like I said, 1.5 kilometers in the mud. I dumped 55 dump truck loads of gravel on the mud to try to make a road to get in there. I mean,
That's crazy.
it was really big. It was a lot of work.
We run into these hiccups sometimes. You can't control Mother Nature, and then so you have to just react as quickly as you can.
Yeah, solve the problem.
Yeah.
Do you typically have to reset everything back to how it was when you got there at the end?
Yeah, sometimes we go into locations if we're filming in somebody's house and we, do a full paint. We tend to work, and Elizabeth and her team are great with us in that respect. She'll give us options to give to them as certain paint colors, and they might pick one and say, yeah, we can live with that. You don't need to do a paint back. Right. And that's great because it saves us time having to go back in. Yeah. And a new paint job. Or we have to paint it back.
House if you need it.
Well, see, now the interesting thing about that is they'll come in and paint what the camera is going to see. They're not painting everything. So if they're looking down a hallway and they're only looking in one direction, they're only going to paint what's facing cameras. A lot of time you have to paint it back.
That's all right.
Yeah.
But we can negotiate that sometimes too, and say to the art department, look, do all 3 walls, you can leave it. So we have to go back and forth a bit that way.
One location last season that was like amazing how different it looked afterwards was, I don't know what college it was, but you guys used a college, I think, for the wife's school that Hannah was going to.
Yeah, York University.
Yeah, and it just like transformed. It looked nothing like it initially had.
We actually did quite a bit at York University last year, like even some of the commander, like the rooms with the crazy looking windows that they had their meeting and the that was all different parts of York, because when you go there for one thing, then you suddenly start finding, well, what else can we find here, and then you end up there for 12 days.
Well, and then, we have to be a bit transparent in the fact that there were a lot of doors that were open to us because of COVID, so it was a bit of a win-win, because certain facilities like the Liberty Grand at the CNE grounds, they were hurting because they couldn't they really couldn't do the events that normally would have been scheduled there, but we were given the green light to go ahead because of all the safety measures we were taking.
And what films there? What was that?
The Liberty Grand. So Fred's funeral, there's a scene where Serena is
picking the area,
seeing the casket for the first time. So that was actually inside of one of the kind of main corridors of the lobbies of the Liberty Grand, and then it opens the doors, and we were in Brantford.
Right.
Oh, so
that's amazing.
Okay, yeah.
And we were at the Royal York Hotel for some pretty big stuff, which typically we would have had to film through the night over a couple of nights, but because they were literally running at like 3% occupancy, we were able to film quite a bit during the day and stay there for quite a few days actually.
Yeah, so. And even Fred's funeral, because we were kind of attempting to do this scene with 700 something extras
background,
during a time where social distancing was a thing. So we had to, I rented an arena and all the seating, and it was supposed to hold 2,500 people. So that's where we ended up holding.
Area?
Yeah.
Oh my god.
And we used the whole ice as where all the hair and makeup stations were. So that kind of social distancing scales up what you have to use for a holding area.
It's like that big camp that when we did do Fred's where we were, we had can't even remember how many tents. Oh, that was out in Welland.
Oh yeah, the train station. So the inside of the train station was the subway at York University. The platform itself, where the train was inside of an old flour mill in Port Colborne, Ontario. We turned their kind of area where they fill the grain for the flour. We built that into the actual train platform.
So cool.
And we built a small city to house our 400 something extras I think we had out there.
That's wild. I hadn't thought about just the holding area for all those extras.
Yeah,
huge camp of tents.
It just quadrupled in scale as soon as COVID happened because we had to socially distance. So you'd have a giant tent that's 40 by 60 and you can only put 43 people in there. So
yeah, that would have been difficult.
Yeah, and a small town like that does not have an arena like Brantford had, so we could do that too. So
what about that tiny church for Fred's funeral? That's a funny scene when they're like, Serena, we're going to have it here.
For Fred's funeral, yeah.
That was actually at one of the buildings that we use for our Red Center, Wycliffe College, which is part, and we there's a tiny chapel there.
Yeah.
So is Wycliffe College active? I mean, you guys use it for the Red Center too, right?
Yeah, it's a functioning college. It's a private school. Their students live on site, which is why it's challenging because they're able to move the students around and do classes in different areas to give us control of a certain area, but because the students live on site, you can't shoot past a certain time and you can't be there too early in the morning, and they prefer to do it on Fridays and Mondays.
Saturday, Sunday, Monday. They are part of the University of Toronto. There's other confederated colleges like Wycliffe, Knox College, Trinity College, but they're all under the shelter of University of Toronto.
Right.
And even last season we were doing that, and we had all the trucker convoys, and all of the trucker convoys were trying to get to Queen's Park, which is our government buildings, which is right right beside that location. So
the city wouldn't issue any permits to us.
We had our permits because of the threat of this trucker convoy that was coming. So we
really,
that got rescheduled multiple times.
That was almost a bigger hiccup than COVID was, to be
really?
honest. Yeah, it really messed with our schedules because we couldn't do anything in the downtown core. So we were really scrambling to figure out where we could go so we could continue shooting and not have to shut down.
Yeah, just shut down for
Yeah, and I mean, with the amount of prep work that we do for all of these locations, kind of, someone saying this week that we can't shoot at next week's location really does throw quite the wrench into the works.
Mm-hmm. Well, and it's cast availability. It just
I cannot even imagine.
Everything gets flipped upside down.
Yeah. There was a scene early in season, I don't know, 1 or 2, but there's this staircase that the handmaids are walking around, and if the shot from above is like an eye shape.
Oh, is that the staircase at Scarborough Campus U of T?
Yes.
Yeah.
That was amazing. How did you find that?
Yeah, Lizzie loved that staircase.
It looks so cool, and it's like...
We did a fair amount of filming at that campus.
We did.
Yeah.
It's a big brutalist building, which is kind of the look of the show. So a lot of the time when we go there, we kind of have it in mind for something. And the more you walk around, the more you're able to find cool places that, a lot of the time maybe it's not even in the script. Maybe it's something we walked around, we found it, and they came up with a plan, and it stuck. It happens a lot.
Was the place where Nick and June meet in season 4, is that a school too? It's like the Magdalena Academy, is that what it's called? It looks like an old school that was like abandoned or something, but they like meet there.
Oh, I think that's the Rockwood Academy. Yeah, which
But
is
that was
the Rockwood
another active
Academy in
school.
Rockwood.
Okay.
Yeah,
So use a lot of
it's
schools.
closed. It's run by the Ontario Heritage Board. Yeah, smaller school, but yes.
Right.
Yeah, kind of a stone exterior. Yeah.
Yeah, all the locations you guys find are amazing. So
thank you.
It really adds to the show.
We enjoy it. We
Such
love
a
the
fun
challenge
job.
on this show. We just love working on this show. It's an awesome show.
Yeah. Everyone we've spoken to, it's amazing. You all just seem to love everything. You hear about things like on other shows where people aren't enjoying themselves and it sucks, but
We've been on those shows, yeah.
Well, I say it all the time. We are here, and it's an enormous amount of work. And while we're here, I guarantee if you walk by our office, you'll hear us complaining. Yeah. But as soon as we go to another show, we're like, oh, should we just back on Handmaid? It's like, this is ridiculous.
We're very sad it's the final season. We really just loved it. We've
and
enjoyed the
will
whole run.
you both the Testaments?
Hopefully, I'd say.
Awesome.
I hope so.
Yes.
Yeah.
One last question. Is there any, one place that you're the most proud of finding?
I think there's a couple this season, but we can't really talk
well,
about
can we talk to you after
The season's
season?
great. I think I really thought Fred's funeral was one of my favorite things that we've ever done.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's
that-
amazing.
Yeah.
Enormous success. Well, thank you so much for coming to chat with us.
Thank you for having us. It was
It's
a lot
our
of fun.
pleasure.
We'd
We'd love to chat to you again.
Yeah.
After this,
Sure.
after the final season, we can
love to.
talk.
I want to hear about all these things
Yeah,
that
we wanna hear about it.
You're
We'd love
hitting
to
him
talk
and
about
telling
it.
him not to tell us.
Yeah.
She's kicked me under the table 3 times.
No, I did not.
It was above the table. She hit you. All right. Well, thank you.
Thanks
Have
again.
a great day.
It was a pleasure.
Thank
Great to
you.
meet you guys.
Thank you.